Okay, well, this is an interesting one. So, if anybody who's been on the vacuum group on Facebook has seen this one, I could not resist the temptations on this one. It is a near dirt cheap, I think with the coupon that was available, I got this for about $109, Oreck clone. Now, the thing I found interesting was, on the original post, a lot of people thought this was just like a bog standard XL knockoff, but the motor didn't sound right from the video I saw. There's the fact that it has a chevron style brush roll. It's actually backwards, but the chevron is in the middle, which makes no sense for your average Oreck XL, considering that inlet is offset to one side. So I wanted to get this and see. At first I was wondering if it was kind of a bastardized XL21, but it's a little bit more interesting than that. So the first thing I'm going to do is flip this guy around. So it uses XL21 connectors and an XL21 handle tube. For a point of comparison, here is the cordless XL21 based Hoover 1 Power. So same diameter tube, same exact handle connection fittings, basically. These ones are a little bit cheaper and a little bit crappier, but they're basically the same thing. So that kind of lended credence to the XL21 thing, but I popped it open, and I'll pop up some pictures here in editing, but long story short, this is actually a magnesium knockoff. It's got the center inlet just like a magnesium that makes that S snake around, and effectively it's magnesium with a 2-row brush roll and XL21 handle tube and XL21 handle controls, basically a cheapened version of that with kind of somewhat knockoff CC bags. So the dock is very similar to CC, but the problem is these bags, the collar is not the same. I'll pull this one here. Collar is not the same as CC. The bags are also wider versus the CC, the standards. These are kind of similar to some of the cheap knockoff CC bags, and they look like they're probably only about 3-ply HEPA bags from what I can see here, but not terrible. They give you 3 extra ones in the package with the machine. Now, I actually did like the assembly card. That is actually nice, like glossy laminated. Main thing that shocks me is these come put in the box a lot worse for overall assembly versus what you see with an Oreck. So basically you have to put, instead of just having to put the handle on like you would with the Orecks, you put basically the entire handle tube on the base and then handle up here in. They also only lock in with 2 basically snap tabs on either side. So, I don't know, this was a very interesting machine to me. It's been a long time since there were any real Oreck knockoffs that have come out. Like, I mean, years past there were the Gary machines, I think one was called like the Avanti Homemaker or something like that, and then obviously there's the Perfect based machines, but all of those were based on the classic XL. I think this is the first that's had influence from anything else. So it's an odd mishmash of what they could pull from XL21, what they could pull from magnesium. That really is what it is at the end of the day. And I mean, this bag is basically, if you look at this cloth outer bag, it is pretty much just a straight rip-off of what you would normally find on a commercial classic XL in terms of the material feel and the way the bag's set up and everything like that. This top case is some of the cheapest plastic and flimsiest I have ever seen. But overall, it's not too bad. The thing I was mainly disappointed with is it does have a regular stretch belt, doesn't have any kind of long life synthetic or tracked or geared belt, so that was a little bit disappointing, but I did kind of expect that. There are basically no parts for it. The fan chamber is not available. Now, if you could open those, if they weren't one-piece plastic welded down the center, from what I can see, and most people I think that are familiar with it can see in the pictures, it'll pretty much be, looks identical to a magnesium fan. So theoretically, if you could get that out and back together, you could fix it. But I think it's an interesting proposition considering it pushes pretty well. It works pretty well. It performs much like a magnesium. Obviously, the base is set up very different to a magnesium. You have wheels here, wheels offset at the side, and you do actually have, unlike the Discover redesign, you do have edge sweeping brushes here. But again, cheap. These screws, there are machine screws that go into brass inserts here. This one is the same type of screw, but it's a normal, basically threaded screw that's going into plastic inserts, and then the rest of these are all different around here. So this thing is an absolute mess. You do have a squeegee though. I saw somebody asking about that. There is actually a relatively formidable squeegee. It does have like these stripped sections where it can actually come apart. It's not one solid piece. They've got like little slits in it, but pretty interesting overall. I should also mention the way that this cord attaches and the way this grommet is inside here. Again, almost a direct ripoff of the magnesium series. You do have a pocket back here, so it's not as cheap as some of the Oreck variants that have ditched the pockets in the back. Those, I think, were mainly from the private equity days and early TTI days, but needless to say, very, very interesting machine. I will show in here, because this was one thing I was curious about and could not find. This manual is not yet online, because Cleva Vacmaster obviously has such great support. You just get a 404. So brush roll, belt, and dust bag. Belt looks actually kind of similar to something like a Hoover 033 belt, maybe a little bit narrower. So definitely not like your typical Oreck belt. It's much, much longer than that. I'm halfway tempted to see if something like a magnesium belt would fit. It would be way too narrow for the pulley, but we'll see. So that's kind of the basic rundown on this machine. Again, very cheap, but compared to what you're looking at for something like a magnesium or a Discover at $5.99, it's definitely not bad. If you like magnesiums and you don't want to pay that price, throwing one of these out if anything breaks and then going with a new machine later really is not that big a deal. So I'm going to pause this, get it plugged in real quick, and we'll go from there. All right, so here is this guy. Handle controls 2-speed. You do have that LED light in the front. I will say, this cord is the cheapest, nastiest thing I have ever seen. It's definitely worse than the one that comes on the $110, $120 base commercial XLs. But I think the rest of this is a little bit more appealing of a package than those base model XLs for the price. Other than the lack of parts, that is. So, I'll flip this on and here we go. So I'll hit low speed first, high speed, I will say it grooms very, very well, as is typical. It actually cleans well, despite the backwards chevron brush. You can tell Cleva has no real quality assurance or quality control due to that factor. But again, I'm honestly impressed. I went in with the intention of basically buying this, looking at it, and probably returning it. Again, durability is not going to be all that great, but this carpet, for an example, a regular Oreck XL or XL21 will not work on this machine. I have an XL21 based Axis, and it burned through its belt almost immediately because you cannot push it on this carpet. These one power hoovers, these are XL21 based, but the lower motor speed and lower air volume that they produce, as well as the softer brush roll they put in the cordless machines, will allow them to be used on this. But a normal XL or XL21, no way. You pretty much have to use a magnesium if you're doing Oreck on these carpets. That crappy little navigator back there really won't work without the suction reduced or pushing very hard. This does clamp down a little bit more than an actual magnesium would, but not by a whole lot. So it's an interesting value proposition. You get quite a bit, I think, for the money. Is it going to last a long time? Probably not. But if you were like me and you had a clearance, Walmart clearance magnesium, I think I only paid $179 for those. This is a nice alternative to not have to spend $5.99 on a Discover if you want a replacement or anything like that. So not too bad. Again, I'm actually fairly impressed for what this can do. Another little shout out I like is the box. It reminds me very much of the artwork you used to see on some of the more plain Panasonic boxes. So, stupid little cute thing, but I've enjoyed it. So, I actually think this is going to stick around and get a fairly decent amount of use, because realistically for $100 you can beat this thing, you can not care if it breaks, toss it out, which is what happens to most of the cheap Orecks anyway, and you're getting a little bit better value for money overall. You're getting, I think, better performance personally out of the magnesium machines versus the classic XLs. In a lot of scenarios, you're getting 2 speeds, you're getting a little bit better brush roll setup, I think, than the plastic that they're using in the current XL20 or XL commercial machines. And the bags, honestly, I never have been a fan of the XL style Oreck bags, so these CC knockoffs are nice, even though they aren't quite as nice as what you'll get with a true CC. But honestly, if you wanted to, you could modify without, I think, too much hassle a CC to fit in there. So overall, very, very interesting. I'm much more positive on this than I would have thought initially, because like I said, I really did think this was going to go pretty much straight back from the impressions I had seen online. But yeah, definitely not a classic XL knockoff. It's the first Oreck knockoff that hasn't been classic XL based, and I think it's very interesting, the combination of XL21 and magnesium that this is. It actually made me very happy to open it up and see magnesium rather than anything else, because over the years I have become quite fond of those magnesium machines. I think they're a very good machine depending on what you're looking to do with them. So interesting that this has the honor of being that. I would never have expected, I would have expected XL21 knockoff entirely much sooner before magnesium, but it's an interesting one, that's for sure. Also, slight side note, made in Vietnam rather than China, which I did not expect for one of these machines, honestly, which gives it, despite its cheapness, a little bit of a leg up in my mind versus some of the really cheap kind of knockoffs we've had over the years of Orecks.